Hey everyone, Ian Morgan Cron here, host of the show Typology. Before my friend Anthony joins us, I have a really big announcement for you. I've finally created my own Enneagram course. It's called True You, a deeper exploration of your Enneagram type. I am so stoked about it. You know, we all know there are lots of great Enneagram resources out there, but frankly, there are so many. It takes a long time to wade through them all, and most of us don't have the time to read them without quitting our day jobs. And so that's kind of what makes True You, this new training, kind of special. Most Enneagram courses briefly cover all 9 types, but in this training, True You, each Enneagram type is broken out into its own separate course specifically tailored to your Enneagram type, okay? This means you can choose to get the course pertaining only to your type, or you can cherry pick the courses you want for the really important people in your life, right? So I'm a 4. I could just choose to get the course on the 4, or let's say I want to know more about my wife's type and she's a 9, so I get the module on 4, I get the one on 9. So it's fantastic, right? They're going to be roughly 90 minutes a pop. So this is not like, light grade training. This is for people who really want to explore deeper topics and immediately apply them into their lives, okay? To help them become more skillful parents, colleagues, friends, partners, and just more attuned human beings, okay? I'm so stoked about sharing it with you. Here's how you can learn more about it. Registration for True You, a deeper exploration of your Enneagram type, opens in the next few weeks. So to join the waitlist to be notified, you need to visit typologyinstitute.com, cool new URL, typologyinstitute.com to sign up. And when you do, you'll get a notification when the course is going to go live. So once again, typologyinstitute.com. Visit it to learn more about this new training called True You, a deeper exploration of your Enneagram type. And now, let's get to our show. Hey, Typology Tribe, Ian Morgan Cron here. And here is not normally where we are.
Our background is a giveaway.
It is a giveaway.
Yeah.
And we got this big old desk.
That's right.
We've really come up in the world, haven't we?
We have, yeah. You want to tell people where we are?
Well, obviously, we are here recording at the studios of Dave Ramsey at Ramsey Solutions. Mm-hmm. Just a few moments ago, I wrapped up a conversation with Dave about the Enneagram and leadership, a little bit about money, and it was fantastic.
It was fascinating, a great interview, yeah.
You know, he really intrigues me, and I think people are going to learn a lot about 8s.
Mm-hmm. He's an 8, really self-aware, and really surprisingly had his head wrapped around the Enneagram.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, when you delved into the other numbers, it was really interesting. Talked about his wife as a 1, some other leaders, 6s.
Now don't preempt
7s.
it. Don't preempt it,
not
man.
too much, but
don't tell too much. All right.
But it was great, really
man,
great.
It really was. Can we get one of these? And
yeah.
Can you?
I
for
think
the
we
next
need to do
time?
this whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
Right? Lights, camera, action. Can we get that whole thing going on?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Typology Tribe, you're about to listen to, or watch for that matter, on YouTube, this wonderful interview with my friend Dave Ramsey. Let's get to it. Dave, welcome to Typology.
My honor to finally be here.
That's right.
We've been friends a long time, and finally our schedules aligned.
Indeed, and I have worked my way up the food chain from your daughter Rachel to Ken Coleman to Christy. I mean, I've kind of been with every Ramsey personality, and here I am finally at the apex.
Oh yeah, I think it was the other way. I think you're working your way down the list, but yeah.
Listen, before we jump into the Enneagram, I don't want to assume that my listeners know a ton about you, so I'd love it if you would just briefly tell us your story and how this amazing business called Ramsey Solutions came to be.
Well, it started because I was stupid. I was buying and selling real estate, and I was a baby Christian. I didn't know anything, and in my 20s, and I borrowed lots of money, and I made lots of money, but it was obviously a house of cards, unstable. I was a millionaire by the time I was 26, and that all came crashing down because I was too leveraged, and the bank got sold to another bank, called our notes. So with a brand new baby, Rachel, and a toddler, and a marriage hanging on by a thread, we got the opportunity to be bankrupt and start over. And so at the bottom of that, I always say we met God on the way up, got to know him on the way down.
Yeah, right.
And so we had an I surrender all moment there.
Right.
We're going to conduct every element of our lives scripturally to the extent we can figure that out. Our marriage, our child raising, our leadership, our money. And I started living by the money principles from Larry Burkett, Ron Blue, and those guys,
right.
Biblical money principles. I learned them, some of my early Bible studies. And it started working gradually. God's stuff never generally check marks, it generally on a slow curve, slow burn. And then pastor called one night and said, hey, there's a couple over here in foreclosure. I don't know how to do anything about that. Can you help them? And I went, yeah, I used to buy foreclosures, then I was one. So,
I've been on either end of that gun.
I can handle that. So that was probably my first coaching session, or counseling, we called it back then, financial counseling. And then I wrote a little book and got on the radio show, got on a radio station that was in bankruptcy that let me work for free. And we just kind of saw it as a ministry, we did. We felt God's hand on it going, okay, this stuff you've been through, this horrible mess, your horrible mistakes, we're going to use it to knock the shame off of a very shame-based subject, money.
Yeah.
We all feel like everybody else has got it together but us.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about money or sex.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. They're both kind of weird and, and shame-based in a sense. Yeah. And so, the fact that I've got a PhD in DUMB allows people to, approach this stuff without me being this guy.
Right.
An arrogant looking over my glasses professor or whatever. And so that has parlayed into radio shows and podcasts and high school curriculum and corporate curriculum, and Financial Peace University's taught in 50,000 churches, 6.5 million people have been through it. Radio show and the podcast are at about 17 million listeners right now, something like that. So we've got about 900, and as of this taping, we got 927 people on the team.
Gosh, and you're hiring like crazy.
We hired 235 last year. And our goal was to do that this year. I don't know if we'll hit it exactly or not. But.
Wow. All right, so let's jump to Enneagram. How did you first learn about the Enneagram?
My lake house was where all the Ramsey kids and grandkids gather on the weekends, and we have wonderful, loud hillbilly discussions there. And can you imagine Rachel Cruz and me in the same room?
Yes,
and then multiply that by a couple people you've not met. Yeah. And so my son Daniel had read the stuff, and he starts sitting and talking about it, and Rachel had, I think, just seen a little bit of it at that point. And so they start pulling it up, and I guess happens probably a lot.
Yeah.
We end up going around the room trying to, in our very first exposure to it, analyze and go, this is where we've been. Because we've all been through Strength Finders. We know Marcus Buckingham. We've all been through DISC. We've got the DISC model. We've been through, I don't know what I am. I'm an IFGTP or something.
Oh,
on the
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, the Myers-Briggs thing. I don't know that one very well.
But I mean,
I'm enthralled by those whole ideas. And so this was an expanded, more layers and different points. And your book was hot. It had just come out. And so we're like going, oh yeah, that's definitely what you are. Yeah, that's what. And we pull up something, and there's even one thing that, like, what animal are you or something on the Enneagram or something like that.
Yeah, that's some of that more kind of goofy.
Yeah, just kind of crazy. It was kind of funny stuff. But yeah, that's how. So it was a big, loud discussion at the lake house.
So what fascinates me is that, well, to a person, okay, that knows you, whether it's people who work closely for you and family members, all tell me that you are an Enneagram 8, the challenger.
Oh, down. I mean, every descriptor. I'm a 8, wing 8. No, I mean, it's every descriptor. You read in your chapter, if you go down, and I have been the toxic version, the unhealthy version, and I've been the healthy version, and that chapter is my autobiography. Yeah, definitely. I got a little wing 7 maybe,
right?
But an off the scale, as much of a consummate 8 as you maybe have ever met.
Wow.
I totally process information by fighting.
Wow.
I enjoy fighting because it's how I process information, and it has absolutely no emotion. It seems to have emotion to it when I'm doing it,
right?
And it takes people that are new in my sphere to understand it has nothing to do with my love for you. As a matter of fact, it's an act of love. It's my love language. If I fight with you, it means I love you, and I think you got something to say. I respect you because I want to argue it through, and
right.
you got to make me be wrong. And if you can, then man, you know that's the H's love language, I think.
It is the H's love language, and it's almost like we were talking about with ones, that criticism is a love language.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think I'm a 4.
Mm-hmm. I know.
4s and 8s are probably the 2 most misunderstood numbers on the Enneagram.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, because people see that rough exterior and that aggression, and they interpret it as an attack, right? When actually it isn't. Or arrogance. What they don't understand is that 4 and 8, intimidation, if you will, is a form of intimacy, right? And conflict is a form of connection, you know? And it's hard for people to really get that through their heads.
Well, because most people, all the other numbers really, are more or less conflict averse.
Right, some of them,
so,
for
you
sure.
know, for instance, on the DISC, I'm a high D, high I. So when I'm on stage, I would be more like a 7 or a 3, a performer, right, on the stage, the high I. But when I'm in a high stress situation or a leadership role and we're grinding through an opportunity or a problem, the high D comes out and I'll just pick up the bodies later. And, you know, it's just like, get the task done, shut the crap up, let's get this done, and then we'll go, oh, and by the way, I love you, and let's go on, you know, but it was just, the way I show I love you is I protect you, I keep the thing moving, I do all those kinds of things, and it's like the roaring lion kind of a thing, but, and you know, a 30-year-old Dave is a lot different than a 60-year-old Dave, too, on those issues, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because I have a 1 to help me.
That's right. You got a 1 pulling in the reins. Sharon's pulling in the reins.
My wife is a 1 for sure. She's definitely an improver, without a doubt.
So what's interesting to me is you just said that you're fascinated with these instruments like the Enneagram, like DISC, Strengths Finder. You know, typically 8s are not very self-reflective people. They're very outwardly focused, not internally focused. They don't spend a lot of time in that interior dialogue. I'm curious about that. Like, what is it about personality, typing systems that fascinates you?
People fascinate me. I love people.
Yeah.
And I love helping people. And the more I can understand myself, I can understand someone else. And I mean, just the nuance with my wife, when you spoke recently at one of our things, I'd always called the 1 the perfectionist, and you called it the improver. And I went, okay, she's not a criticizer, she's an improver. And that just helped me just that little thing. That's so helpful.
Yeah.
And so I guess I guess the 8 is task driven, and so it's very practical.
Earthy.
That I can get things done more efficiently if I understand why you're doing that.
Right.
And then I can stop and go, okay. And this is why I probably don't need to be quite as toxic an 8 in this situation, because you're a 6 and I'm completely destroying you.
Right. Right.
And it's not really profitable for the whole process.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I tell leaders when I'm doing corporate consulting is the biggest mistake you can make is to assume or presume that your way of seeing the world is normal.
Right.
That if the Enneagram is right, there are at least 9 normals, 9 ways of seeing the world. And if you think your way is normal, you will, every time you meet someone who sees the world differently, make the assumption that they're abnormal, And it sounds like you have learned that your way of seeing the world is one of several, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And others bring to the table gifts and talents that can make up for your absence in that area.
And I think that's probably, in your materials, a healthy, if you can learn that, that's one element of being healthy versus toxic version of an 8 or a version of whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, Sharon did that. The first time I read DISC was probably 30 years ago. And we printed off the little report and everything, and I brought it home, and I was enthralled because it like read my mail. Just like when I read the 8 chapters, like, oh, that's interesting. Completely, I see me. It's like looking in a mirror. And it had the D and the I up there, and no S, no C.
Right.
And so, I can make a decision. If I don't like it, I can make another decision real quick. So
that's right.
I don't have any trouble making decisions.
No, you do not. Big decision makers.
Yeah. So, I brought it home, and actually Sharon's sitting in bed, and I climbed up in bed. I said, hey, read this. This is great. And she reads through it, and she said, oh, that's what's wrong with you. And it took me about 10 years to convince her that the SC that she is not the correct one and the other's the incorrect.
Right. So you know that there are 3 types of 8s, right? That for every number, there's 3 variants based on instincts, right? One is called a self-preservation, the other one is social, and the other one is called one-to-one bonding. And every type has these 3 variants. So the other day, as I was getting ready to do the Entre Leadership Summit, which was last week, fantastic, right?
You did a great job.
Well,
everybody loved you.
Thank you very much.
It was an incredible event overall.
The event was fantastic, right? In order to prepare, I read all of your books.
Oh my gosh.
I watched a ton of your podcasts. And I'm shaving, right? I've got my iPad right here, and I'm watching and shaving, and a person called, and I don't know if you remember this, you've done so many shows, but I think it was fairly recent. You said this, they were describing a problem they were having in their marriage, right? And the problem is that she was totally on board with your program about getting to zero debt. Husband was not.
Okay.
Right? And you kept probing and you kept probing, and at one point you said, ma'am, you don't have a money problem, you have a marriage problem. And I thought, it just took me by surprise and made me realize that you're probably what's called a social 8, meaning that you have this, you have all this aggression, you have this comfort with conflict, you enjoy a heated debate, but you also have this nurturing side that I think about those coaches that you have in high school that you love and hate, but you love them because you know that just they're so hard on you, but you know that it's motivated by care. Now, not all 8s are like that, right? But that particular 8 is often the most popular number on the Enneagram.
It depends the situation. I guess it's situational, but and I completely accept that. I think that's probably accurate. And the self-preservation might have been how it started in its toxic form, a toxic form of the self-preservation one. Because I haven't gone broke,
right?
And because I haven't grown up without anything to mount anything. I mean, we had a little money, but we weren't, we were middle class, lower middle class, and wonderful family,
right?
But work ethic, but this idea that something's always behind you, looking over your shoulder kind of thing. And as I got past that with my spiritual walk and my level of trust, and I got past that with money, where there was enough money that I didn't have to worry about that.
Right.
Forrest Gump says one less thing to worry about,
Right.
So, but but I think I may have gravitated. Hopefully, that may have been part of my evolution. If you do move, I don't know if you move through those or not.
Well, it just sort of depends on the situation. We tend to default to one, but it's circumstance dependent. So obviously, if a guy walked in here holding a knife, right, you'd go to self-preservation real fast, but you lean into a social sort of an instinct, more of the time. It's where you just default to, right? But but I really began to appreciate, as I was listening to you, this blend of I'm hard on you. You're going to hear about what I think straight on. Mm-hmm. But in the background of that was this, because I really care about your life. Mm-hmm. I really care about you. I want the best for you.
And I think that's translated and made the radio show work.
Right.
On the good days when I do that,
right.
Which is not every day. Some days I got too much caffeine, I'm just a jerk. But or some days I'm just mailing it in. But the days that I'm really okay, this person has just started listening. They haven't been here 28 years while I've been there.
Right.
And I stop and do that. That's probably the most compelling radio I do, because you can hear the light bulb turn on with them.
Right.
Because they're getting the truth, and they're making a decision to change. Right. But it's all for them. Right. It's not for me. Right. And you can tell that, and the listener can. I think that's driven the ratings and driven the growth of it, probably. Yeah.
I think that's true. I would bet, right? I'm a newbie really to the culture and the ecosystem here. But I think people like the truth. I mean, it hurts, but they can only take it from someone that they know deeply cares about them. Right. You know? The whole accountability movement that we had a few years ago, yes. After Promise Keepers, everybody was accountable to someone. Right. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not accountable. You don't even know you. Right. You know, and we started teaching people, for instance, in Financial Peace, that if you want to hold someone accountable, you have to have a relationship with them. Yes. And you can't smack somebody in the back of the head unless your arm is first around their shoulder. That's right. Then you can cuff them. That's what my mother used to call it, cuffing. You can reach them then. You know what I mean? I grew up in this very strong Irish Catholic family, and my mother, we used to laugh. I said, my mother would hit you for no reason in the morning. You go, why'd you do that? And she goes, in case. That sounds classic. Yeah. Oh, if you met my mother, you would know how classic that was. So knowledge and integration are two different things. Right. You can know something and not allow it to transform you. Or as a friend of mine says, information is not transformation. Exactly. So how have you begun to use your knowledge of the Enneagram, of your eightness? How have you begun to integrate that into your family life, into your work life? Has it in any way changed the way that you move through the world? Yeah, I probably let my foot off the gas a little bit quicker. Right. In a conflict. Right. Particularly a conflict with a group of our leaders that I love and trust, and that know, even though they know that, you know, whatever I'm driving through, that it is not a thing where I'm personally trying to harm them or something. Right. But I'm just like, okay, they get it already. I don't need to do that, you know, and I can let off a little bit. Right. And I'm doing that partially because I need to temper that, and it needs to be more mature, in my mind anyway. And secondly, I'm starting to look around the room going, okay, that guy's a 4 and this guy's a 6 and that's a 9. Right. Yeah. And so I got to really, you know, how is all this translating? Because if they're not all 8s, they don't necessarily enjoy the process. No, they do not. No, they do not. Nor do they understand it. Well, they do understand it after working with me for 20 years, but right. But they still don't understand it. Right. So what you're referring to there, and I want to talk about leadership today quite a bit, because we just came out of the EntreLeadership Summit. What role does vulnerability play in leadership? I don't believe people will choose to follow, meaning you're a leader, an inauthentic person. Mm-hmm. If I think you're fake, why would I hitch my star to that wagon? Right. And so vulnerability doesn't have to be, in my mind anyway, of course this might be an 8 answer, but just sitting here thinking what I'm saying, but it doesn't have to be I'm sad, I'm a worthless worm, right. I'm incompetent. Right. It doesn't have to be those things. It can just be, I'm really angry right now. Mm-hmm. This really makes me angry. Right. And I just got to tell y'all, I don't think I'm gonna make a good decision, so we got to take a timeout. Right. And we got to come back to this in the morning. Yeah. And because if I make a decision right now, I don't think it's going to be the right one. Right. And that's a type of vulnerability to me anyway. Yes. And sometimes it can be, this really just breaks my heart. Yes. It just makes me want to cry. Yeah. And will you say that to people? Oh, all the time, yeah.
All the time.
It's so fascinating about 8s. They're usually the first to cry.
Yeah, I cried an Applebee's commercial. Yeah, absolutely. My wife's the one that'll be looking at me in a movie and she said, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm crying."
You know, it's part of that gusto, you know, that 8s have, you know. And part of it is, and this is why 8s are so misunderstood. You know, typically we say the unconscious motivation of the 8 is a need to assert power and strength over the environment and other people in order to mask feelings of weakness and vulnerability.
That's a toxic version, isn't it?
Nope, I just think it's
not, okay.
I think sometimes 8s perceive the world as a hostile place where, you know, you eat.
I agree with that.
You either get eaten or
I always tell you, people, control the controllables.
Yes.
You got to control the controllables. And if you do that, and so then, you know, the 2 says, "Oh, you're one of those bootstrap guys. You don't get that people have real problems."
Right. Except for 8s, though. It's interesting, and this is something people don't understand, is 8s aren't bullies.
A toxic one is.
Very toxic. There's another number on the Enneagram that can be a bully. But typically 8s like to actually fight the bullies. Like if they meet a bully, they're because they want to defend people.
Yeah.
They're, in fact, another word that I use for challengers that I've been playing with more and more is the defenders.
Oh, interesting.
Because there's a real defending side to 8s too. It's sort of like, I'm going to power up on someone who's taking advantage of the weak.
Which is the consumer advocacy portion of this bank's taking advantage of you, this payday lender's taking advantage of you, this car lease is taking advantage of you, this whole life company's taking advantage of you, and me taking, you know, standing between the consumer and this bad product or offering or company and going, these people, beware, beware.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah, a reformer 1 will do that. And an 8 will do that.
A reformer 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're notorious for that. But what I was going to say about vulnerability was, you know, in terms of leadership, one of the things I've been thinking about, you know, obviously you don't go into a meeting to do therapy, right? That's not the point. But I think it's important, and I want to ask you if you do too, that we model for the people who work for us, our team members, a certain degree of vulnerability about where we're hurting or where we're frightened. Otherwise, they feel like, how can I be real with the leader because I'm feeling that way too? And if the leader names it first, you know, you don't have to do therapy with them, but you know, you can just say, as you did, I'm really sad about this, or I'm upset about this, you know?
Yeah, and I think if where it's most valuable is where there's an elephant in the room.
Okay.
When you come into the room and there's a problem.
Right.
There's a some kind of conflict. There's a something in the organization is broken. Somebody's coming at you from the outside, or whatever, and you go, okay, let's just stop first and go, this is really ticking me off.
Right.
I'm going to kill these people. You know, I'm going to fight this to the death. They're not going to win, you know?
Right.
And then everybody goes, yeah, me too. I was kind of feeling that way too. And, or I'm kind of scared about it. And I go, yeah, I understand. So bottom line is there's a bunch of emotion around this, and we still have to be wise. So how are we going to make the right decision? And then once we kind of just let the elephant out of the room, that there's emotion associated with this situation.
Yeah.
And it can't be, you know, a normal operational thing. I don't go into operational meetings and ask everybody about their feelings. We just do business there. But where there's a thing, it's very valuable.
Yeah. It's interesting. I worked with a company not long ago. I worked with their executive team. There were about 12 or 13 guys. And I did one of my IEQ9 inventories with them. And let's see, of those guys, I'd say 80%, 90% were 8s.
Wow.
Yeah. It was unbelievable.
Highly unusual.
Oh my gosh. And from the CEO to CFO to, I mean, you just name it.
Is that healthy even?
Well, now, this was interesting. They had explosive growth.
Oh, I bet.
Okay.
There's a lot of explosions in that building.
Yeah, there were a lot of explosions in that building. And they were not very self-aware 8s, right? And downstream, right, they do a corporate survey. It's about maybe 1,000 people in the company. I'd say there were about 500 5s in the building. They were all coders.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. And so they'd done a company-wide survey, and what came back was, even though they were explosive growth, numbers were tripling. I mean, you know, it was just crazy growth. Went to a brand new building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they got these surveys back that were very critical. We don't trust you. You're not telling us enough. There's no transparency. I said, because you have, 8s have more energy than any other number on the Enneagram. I always laugh when I say most people run on 120 volts, like the regular plug that you plug in. But 8s are that one behind your dryer, the big plug, the one that when you're afraid, the one that you're afraid to plug in for fear the house might go down. You know what I'm saying? And I said, you are exhausting everybody downstream and moving so fast.
I still do that.
Do you?
Yeah. Not as much as I used to.
Right.
But I can still see sometimes in their eyes.
Yeah. So one of the things,
but I am setting a tone,
right?
And the unspoken rule is keep up.
Yeah, right. And I think that's okay as long as part of the equation is, like you're a doing type, but there are feeling types and thinking types, and always sort of in the back of your mind as a leader realize, okay, I got feeling types and thinking types around me, so it's like, how do you feel about what we're doing right now? Yeah. What do you think of what we're doing right now? Versus, let's just get doing. Let's just get going. The other two are going to be slightly lagging behind you, which I guess sometimes is frustrating for you.
Not as much anymore, but yeah, in the early days. Because I thought they just couldn't keep up. But it's not, that wasn't what it was.
You got any 6s on your team, do you know?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Because they tap your brakes, don't they?
Yeah. If you don't have them in a leadership team, the 8s will outrun your resources.
Yes.
You'll outstrip your manpower, your money, your technology, and you'll go, because 8s don't, myself included, we're like, where there is no vision, the people perish.
Right.
Get it done.
Yeah, right.
And we just keep running, and you left the supply train back here.
Right.
And then you get taken out by the enemy.
Yep.
Because there's no bullets, there's no gasoline, there's no food, it's all back there. And the 6s are like, hey, we're coming, but just chill.
Yeah, right. So, what you're describing is a self-aware leader. Like, it sounds like you have baked into your calculations, there are lots of people who are different than me. And I need to appreciate difference and tap into the best that they bring to the table, rather than see a 6, let's say, as a wet blanket on my dreams. Yeah. You know what I mean? But to kind of carefully listen when they say, maybe the third quarter would be a better time to do that in terms of cash flow, instead of doing X, Y, or Z, and stopping to go, you probably know better than I do that that's the course to take. I should pay attention.
Well, if I've got consensus around me with people that I trust and I'm the only one in the room that's wrong, then apparently I'm wrong.
Yeah, right. That's right, man. So, self-awareness. We talk a lot about that. We did it Entree Leadership. I would describe self-awareness as understanding your personality, the effect that it has on other people, learning your blind spots, the ability to monitor and self-regulate your personality in real time so that you see the effect it's having on people, and then adjusting or just making choices. Is this how I want this to land, right? Is this going to move the needle or move the ball forward, or am I really just hurting myself in this moment, right?
It helps you to adjust, but it also helps you at other moments to just be comfortable in your own skin. And this is just what it is.
Right.
And I'm good with that.
Right.
I'm good with, for instance, criticism that comes in, we bail our hate mail.
Right.
But it's usually I can just read down the tweet or the whatever or the nasty note or whatever it is, which I don't read them all for sure. But and I go, they just don't know me.
Right.
I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm going on. They have no idea what my heart is. All they heard was loud, and they heard this and conflict, and they're, polar opposite of that, and can't deal with it. And so they just and plus they didn't like my politics or something, and that gave them a reason.
Right.
And so it's just I can go on. It's water off the ducks back then.
Right.
So it helps with that kind of thing too.
Yeah. So, in your mind, when you just think about leadership in general, how important is it for leaders to really know themselves?
You're going to be very limited in what you lead if you don't.
Right.
And then the next step immediately is to know others.
Right.
And to be able to adapt and adjust and read the room. And, because if it's all about me, and you all have to adjust to the axis of the world runs through my pointed head.
Right. Yeah.
Then you're not going to lead anything very big.
Right.
Because talent's not going to stick around.
Right.
You're not going to keep high capacity leaders in that situation. They don't tolerate that kind of guy, gal. That kind of person who just that's a toxic thing in my mind.
Right.
That's just a lack of spiritual growth, a lack of emotional awareness, and so on. And I think that might be one of the things that has caused me to gravitate towards this stuff is John Maxwell talks about in 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I read that book, I don't know, 30 years ago, whenever it was he wrote it, 25 years ago. Number 3 is the law of the lid. I'm the problem with my organization. I'm the limiting factor on my organization. And so if I'm not self-aware and I'm not growing my capacity and growing in my self-awareness, growing in my authenticity, growing in those areas, then the organization is limited. So what we're going to be able to get done is limited because the quality of person we're going to be able to attract and retain goes away. Because again, thoroughbreds don't hang out with those kinds of people.
Yeah. Now you've said the word authenticity 3 times in this conversation. So what, as something that's a value to you, what is authenticity to you?
It's honesty. That the other person, you're the same on Sunday as you are on Monday. And it's a consistency, it's a type of integrity.
Right.
To me, it's a piece of integrity.
Right.
That it's a predictable thing. This is who that person is because they let me in enough to know that I believe that. I'm not dealing with only the facade. Because the facade is not predictable. It's not a reliable thing. Right. And so the only way I can rely on my pastor to lead me spiritually is I have to believe that he is a person who had some of the same fears, some of the same things make him mad, and probably had a fight with his wife once. Right. And that kind of stuff. And so the pastor that's perfect, I ain't got time for that.
It's so interesting you should say that because one of the things I've learned lately is to tell the difference between transparency and authenticity.
Interesting. Explain that.
Well, I think transparency is a kind of contrived authenticity.
Oh.
Have you ever seen those pastors who it's almost like, I'm going to be authentic with you right now. I'm going to tell you about my inner world. But you got a sense that it's been
very
rehearsed.
Manipulative. Yeah.
It's been rehearsed.
Yeah.
I'm going to be real with you right now. Yeah. I'm going to talk to you about my inner world.
And if they have to say that, they're probably not.
Right.
It's like when someone starts telling me how honest they are, I grab my wallet. It's like
or someone says
you can trust me.
Yeah,
oh God, here we go.
When you hear somebody say it's not about the money, you know
it's always about the money.
Yeah.
Or the old joke a friend of mine said, if you're going out with a girl and she says I'm not crazy, that means she's crazy.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, I guess as we sort of move toward our time, moving in on toward a close here, decision making is a huge part of leadership. 8s typically are big decision makers, and they're fast to make a decision, right? What's your decision making process like?
The thing that keeps me from being rash in large decisions inside the business is a team of leaders that I trust, their input. And so one of the times we got together with an operating board retreat, we were kind of going around the room assessing and talking about different things. And when the assessment time came and they were all assessing me, we all assess each other all the time. One of our ladies said, that's real powerful personality, said, I love the fact that you can get to the decision, that you can get to the conclusion 40 minutes before the rest of us. And I hate the fact that you go there without us. You do this quantum leap. And from that retreat 4 years ago or whatever, still now the vernacular in the leadership team is, okay, Dave, you're quantum leaping, stop. Because I can gather the info, and I've got more experience than some of them in some of these situations. And plus, don't mind making a decision, because if I don't like it, I'll make another one. And so,
yeah, right.
You know, it's like, and so I'll just go there, and they're all going, wait a minute.
Right.
I'm still trying to understand that, and back and forth. And so the consent, in the multitude of counsel, there's safety, the Bible says. And so if I really believe that, then I have to say, okay, the thing that protects me from doing a rash, inaccurate decision, even though my mind naturally does that, is I don't have consensus. Mm-hmm. And so even though I own the place and I'm the CEO and I can play that card and go, we're doing it, shut up. I can do that. I never do. I never do. 1% of the decisions are, the chances of me going against the 10 people sitting around that room that I've walked with for a decade is almost zero.
So that sounds to me, and by the way, you're so right about, this quantum leap thing, because I often tell 8 clients, I'll say, before you can lead the band, you got to join it.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what I'm saying? You can't be out there with the thing going off, like, doing your thing, and then the band is a mile and a half behind you, You've got to be part of the band, in order to lead it.
If the engine leaves without the train, it's still sitting there. You're exactly right. That's exactly true.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of stuff. So I want to ask you a more broad question. I asked this to Mike Hyatt because he's got this new book about the vision and leadership.
Brilliant book. Brilliant.
It is. It's great. What do you think of the overall state? If you had to give a diagnosis of and this is not a political question, just it could be a corporate question, just in general, the overall state of leadership in the world today.
There are layers and pockets that are better than they've ever been. And there are layers and pockets that are worse than they've ever been. And it's probably, in my mind, got to do with a moral deterioration that says I'm important rather than treat your neighbor like you want to be treated. And the leaders that are stepping up and going, okay, leadership is influence. I'm not a boss, I'm a leader. Bosses push, leaders pull. And the leaders that are doing that and have a moral component, in my case as a Christian, a spiritual component, to serve as a leader. And I do actually meet a few of those in politics. I'm not around politicians much, don't care much for the space, but occasionally I'll sit down with one and he's just serving.
Yeah.
She's just serving.
Yeah.
And they're humble. And I'm like, where are your friends?
Right.
Get some more of you around here.
Yeah.
And so but I run into it in all kinds of businesses. I see it in small business a lot.
Okay, tell me more.
A lot. Small business people have this love of their team, the family atmosphere.
Right.
And so that it causes a sense of service. I'm here to take care of them. There's a paternal thing, a pastoral thing to them, and that's one of the reasons I love small business people. I've been one my whole life too. So, but
not now.
Well, it's like a small business that got big, but yeah. But I mean, hopefully some of the values are still there. But the and then you see the people that are just self-important,
right?
And they don't see leadership as a duty, they see it as an award. And when you do that, then they're not going to be self-aware because it's all looking at chest thumping and all that kind of stuff. And it hurts my feelings when I get accused of being one of those just because I'm an 8.
Right.
But
that's stereotyping, not typing.
Yeah.
When someone does that, I think.
But I mean, that's what I'm talking about, the hate mail type stuff that comes in. They're accusing me of, oh, you're just all about the money because you did this or this or this. And I'm never all about the money.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
I'm all about a lot of stuff, and I'll get up in your grill about it, but I'm not trying, just the money usually is a byproduct of having done the right thing and serve someone well. Helping up people you don't have to worry about money is one of our core values.
Right.
And so, but that's still just a misunderstanding of someone that's not an 8, looking at an 8 from the outside, looking for a reason to disagree anyway because they don't want to do something.
Right.
But I see enough really good leaders that are noble that it gives me a lot of hope.
That's a good word, noble.
It gives me a lot of hope.
So the deadly sin of 8s is lust, and that's not necessarily in the sexual sense of the word. But what it is this, it's almost a passion for excess. You know what I mean? It's this gusto, man.
I got it.
You got it, right?
Oh, for sure. In spades.
Yeah. And the virtue, so we think of the Enneagram as a tool for transformation. It's not just, hey, I just want to know, I want to know enough about myself, then I can make sense of the past, I can, have talk to my friends at the cooler about my type versus their type, blah, blah, blah. Knowing your number on the Enneagram is not the point.
Right.
Right, that's a beginning place.
Right.
It's actually the hard work of kind of working through the shadow of your type so that you can live into the highest expression of it, right?
Agreed.
So then the virtue, which is the antidote to your lust, right, this deadly sin of lust, there's a couple of people use for 8s. One is innocence, developing innocence. And what that means, I would call it, is to get rid of, as many 8s have, I think, cynicism with closed-heartedness. Get rid of the cynicism with closed-heartedness, but to become kind of like to recover that childlike innocence and be more open-hearted to people and to the world, right? I think another one, obviously, is moderation. Is a virtue that 8s can afford to do some work on, and vulnerability, because often 8s confuse vulnerability with weakness. And
that makes sense.
Right, when vulnerability, so I've often told people, 8 leaders, for example, vulnerability and weakness are not the same thing. In fact, powering up on people is if you're purely just powering up on people and kind of pushing them around, lots of elbow throwing, that's actually cowardice. That's you protecting your heart. Whereas vulnerability is what requires courage. Vulnerability is, and I don't mean transparency. We were talking about transparency before, but I'll tell you how I know I'm being vulnerable. Is my heart rate goes up and I get a knot in my throat, not of crying, but of like, I'm going there. You know what I mean? Like I am telling you the truth about how I feel about this or what I'm doing about it. How are you doing, and do you think at this moment in your life, at moving toward those virtues?
It's one of my favorite quotes from Warren Wiersbe. He said, meekness is not weakness. It's power under control.
Say that again, because that's amazing.
Meekness is not weakness. It's power under control, which I think is what you were saying. And so it takes strength to help the weak. Broke people can't feed hungry children.
Right.
It takes money to do that. You have to have financial strength to feed, $1,000 car will change a single mom's life. $10,000 will do it for 10. It takes strength. And you have the $10,000 extra. And your family's still fed, So it takes strength so meekness is not weakness, it's power under control. So this idea that somehow this outward bombastic display of strength is an indication of strength is, I think most of us have been around a little while. You walk around a little while, that's usually the guy that's really pretty weak inside.
Right. I feel like I need to end the interview, even though I don't want to, because I want to end with that phrase, and I'm going to use it, so thank you, going forward. Attribution there, never again.
I didn't say it, Warren Wiersbe said it.
Okay,
so
but that phrase, power under control, I think is where the 8 needs to think about moving. Doing the right, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons with the right intensity, right? That's power under control, right? Realizing I got big guns, man. And I know that if, probably as a younger man you did this, I unholstered them too fast, I blew them around, whatever. But power under control to me sounds like an 8 living in wisdom and moving toward those virtues that I just mentioned.
Well, I'm 60, there ought to be a little of that.
Man, I better be moving towards something.
That's it.
Because we know we are moving towards something. Dave, I have loved this conversation.
It was fun.
With
Thank you.
And
good to have you, my friend.
I will be honest, this is authenticity, not transparency. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time working with your people.
They're good people.
They are very good people. And there's a consistency across the organization that I feel, which is a commitment to excellence. When I come in here, I feel, I've been in lots of corporate offices, and I got a good sniffer.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, I can walk in and actually right when I'm at the front desk, you know, asking for who, I can go, this place is either a mess or it's toxic or it's too, the competition here, actually people are not for each other, you know, all that kind of stuff. But what I've sensed here is a sense of mission that's pretty consistent. It's calm in the best sense of the word, stable, right? There's a stability here. And I think that speaks to the fact that people sense that you are powerful, but you're for them. That's a huge deal, man. Yeah. Thirdly, that you have your power under control, which is a phrase I'm going to use all the time now. That health and innate part of that health profile is a healthy 8 is one who has their power under control, which I think is a great place for us to end this conversation.
Thanks. Honored to be with you.
This was great. Thank you so much.